Oh, you're on mute.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you're located. I know most of the faces that I can see on the screen, but for those of you that I haven't had the fortune of meeting previously, I'll do a quick 15-second introduction. My name's Adam Norse, based in New York, originally from the UK. In the US, for a club in New York called Downtown United. I work with players of all different ages, from 4 to 18, and I currently coach the 9-year-old girls, sort of season long. Today we are going to talk about filling emotional tanks. This is the first principle talk about today. So let's jump straight into it. Do you have any volunteers, anyone willing to read out this first quote?
I would be happy to read it. It says, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, as a coach, when I first started coaching, somebody told me, and it took a couple of years to really understand this, that kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Again, it took me a few years for the weight of this to impact me. So players aren't interested about how deep your tactical knowledge is, your X's and O's. They want to know that you care about them and that you want to get to know them and improve them as people before you can improve them as players. So that is what this is all about. So here we are. Filling emotional tanks. Every single one of us, whether you're a player or a coach, has got an emotional tank. So what we're going to talk about today isn't just sports specific. This is life specific. You can go away and use this not only with your players, you can use this in your everyday relationships with your children, with your family, etc. So has anyone ever coached a team that you would say was underperforming and not reaching the potential? Excellent. I think I can see all the hands going up there. So what were the characteristics? How would you describe that team at that moment? Is anyone willing to sort of share some of those characteristics with us?
Well, we basically didn't have any people really looking very positive. They were kind of like slumped over their shoulders, kind of tail between their legs. You know, there was like almost like a cancer that spread throughout our team, you know, that one person was feeling kind of down in the dumps, and then, you know, they'd share it with somebody else, and then they would go and share it with the rest of the teammates, and it just was not a positive vibe whatsoever.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, that's contagious. Sort of, that pessimistic feeling, that lack of hope, spreads from one player to the next. There's a heaviness around it. Absolutely. Anybody else?
My team that I coached came off of a really tough coach. I was replacing someone that was fired. It was basketball, and high school basketball. So they had a chip on their shoulder that I was going to be like he was, and they weren't motivated by him. So I found myself having a lot of trouble connecting with them.
Yeah, that's always tough when you're taking over from another coach. I mean, I've experienced that myself also. So yeah, when athletes have empty emotional tanks or e-tanks, like Mickey said, they lack hope. They're pessimistic. They don't want to go the extra yard. They give up easily. And the worst thing for us as coaches, they are less coachable. They are less open to what you're showing them and what you're telling them. And it's really tough. It's a really heavy environment. And it's not fun. It's not fun for the coaches, and it's not fun for the players. So that's what an empty emotional tank looks like. On the reverse, mean, athletes with a full E-tank, they are more optimistic. They are full of hope. They're excited about the potential, not only in their own game, but for the team. They don't give up easily. They overcome challenges. They want to go again and learn from mistakes. And as we all want as coaches, they're more coachable. They're more receptive to what we're telling them and how we're trying to guide them along this journey. So how do we do this? How do we fill their emotional tanks? Can I have a volunteer? Anyone willing to volunteer and help me out?
I'll help you out.
Kelly, thank you. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to be the goalkeeper. We're in a soccer game. It's the championship game. After 16 long weeks, including pre-season, this is the championship game. You're going to take a penalty. If you score, we win the championship. Or your team wins the championship. If you miss, the season's gone. Okay, the championship's gone. Everybody else, you're the coaches, and you're gonna respond when she misses this penalty. The first time, I want you to respond in a negative way. So Kelly, over to you. So I'm the goalkeeper. You're gonna take the penalty. 3, 2, 1. You've missed. You've kicked.
Oh my God! What were you doing?
There goes our whole season.
So bad.
I mean, Kelly.
We should have had someone else kick it.
I mean, you whiffed on that. You whiffed.
Kelly, how are you feeling now? You've just missed that. The season's gone down the drain. Everyone's told you so. How are you feeling?
I feel awful.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, I didn't even take the penalty, and I don't feel great either. This time, you are going to take the same kick. You're going to miss again, but this time, coaches, you're going to fill her E-tank. 3, 2, 1, go.
Kick.
Ball's over the bar.
We still love you, Kelly.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. How do you feel? I mean, what's the difference now, Kelly?
Well, I'm a little confused because they're cheering for me and I just missed.
Yeah. Do you feel better or worse than the first time?
I feel better because they still love me, but I'm still pretty mad at myself.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean you still want to go again, though. Okay, this time you are going to take the same kick. I'm the goalkeeper. You're still going to miss. However, coaches, you are going to respond without saying a word. 3, 2, 1, take your kick. Boom. Ball's over the crossbar, missed. I can see people holding their heads. Ruben's covering his eyes. Mickey's shaking her head, it looks like. You know, how are you feeling, Kelly?
I feel terrible.
Yeah, and they haven't even said a word.
No, they didn't have to.
So the point here is coaches, like you said, Kelly, don't even have to say a word. Communication is actually 90% non-verbal. So not only they didn't have to say anything, you can see from their reactions just the negativity. So coaches, how would you respond non-verbally to fill her E-tank? What could you do? What type of things can we do? Clap. People are fist pumping.
Pat her on the back.
Pat her on the back. Excellent. So moving back to the screen. Moving back. So what drains the tank? So we've got criticism and correction. We've got sarcasm. I mean, sarcasm to players is a real no-no for me. Is unless you're dealing with older players and it's tied into your sense of humor, it's such a grey area, sarcasm. Let's stay away from it. Ignoring a mistake, this passive aggression that you sometimes see from coaches. Let's stay away from that. Yeah, just this sort of ignoring. At least say something positive or do something positive. A thumbs up, or just a clap in your hands. And as you just showed us then, this non-verbal communication, throwing your clipboard down, turning away, covering your eyes. Even though you're not saying any words, you're just draining the tanks of your players. They can feel it. They can sense it. So, how do we fill the tanks then? Truthful, specific praise. Question for you. Has anyone here ever given anyone, might not even be in a sporting environment, anyone given anyone any negative feedback in their life?
Yep.
Okay. If you think about when you give someone some negative feedback, do we tend to give general negative feedback? Like, oh, I don't like you, or I didn't like the way you did this. But in my experience, when we give negative feedback, we are so specific. I don't like the fact that you spoke to me in that tone of voice. I don't like the fact that you were late. We're very specific when we're giving negative feedback. So as coaches, let's be very specific when we're giving praise. Just saying well done or good job is great, but let's help our players by being specific with the praise that we give them. Yeah? Expressing appreciation. Tell players that you value them. Tell them you're grateful that they're part of the team, that they work hard, that they are a team player. Let them know. Verbalize it. As coaches, I find myself doing this a lot, is even though we think that and we are grateful for our players, we don't let them know. Has anyone else experienced that? Good. Listening, this is a massive one for me. This is something that I'm working on myself. Is as a coach, we have this tendency to help our players. So that looks like us constantly giving information, speaking all the time. But we've got to learn to be an aggressive listener. So what does that look like for us as a coach? Examples could be, ask your players questions. How did your day go at school? What did you think of the practice? It can be sport specific, or it can be non-sport specific. What are your plans for the summer? The more we connect with our players, and they connect with us. The more we're filling their e-tanks, and they're going to be more connected to us and more coachable and more prepared to sort of keep pushing forward on the journey with us. And again, going back to non-verbals, just be mindful of your non-verbal communication. We're constantly communicating with the players, whether you know it or not. So just be mindful of your responses. We should always be thumbs up, clapping, sort of tapping them on the back. So we're always communicating. How's this? How's everyone feeling? Is this useful? Anyone got any questions at this point?
Pretty good.
Good, excellent. Okay, so what is the one thing we as coaches can do to be more effective? Sorry. So anyone got any ideas? Well, anyone got any ideas?
I'd say we could be more positive on a regular basis.
Yeah, be more positive. Absolutely. We have a ratio that we have borrowed from some of the world's leading psychologists, John Gottman being one of them, that we call the magic ratio of positive to negative criticism. So the amount of positives to criticism, the ratio that we give. Anyone got any ideas what that number may be? Anyone from their own experience want to have a guess? Any volunteers?
2 to 1.
2 to 1? Yeah. Thanks, Reuben.
I think it's higher. I'm going to say 3 to 1.
Okay, Emily, you got your hand up.
She says 5.
5 to 1? 5 to 1. The correct answer is, we're going to go with Emily's, 5 to 1. So we call this the magic ratio. We call this the magic ratio. So this is the amount of positives we need to give to our players before we can deliver a negative. Anyone got any thoughts why we have this? Why we have this number? Why we don't just have it as a 1-to-1?
The criticisms, the negatives are just so strong and powerful. They stick with us so much. They affect us so much. I think that you just need way more positive to counterbalance it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's power in our words, whether we like it or not, especially with our younger players. The words that we use have got so much weight in their lives. So if we're constantly giving negative feedback or constructive criticism, or however we want to word it, they're not going to think they're moving forward. We've got to fill their tanks with positivity, and then at the right time, we deliver some constructive criticism. Yeah, I remember I played soccer to a reasonably high level, and I can remember 2 specific pieces of positive feedback I got from coaches in my entire career. Believe it or not, I only got 2 specific pieces of feedback. I mean, there was general team stuff and well done, etc. But actually, as I've gone through the PCA material and looking back over my own career, it actually makes me, sometimes it makes me laugh, sometimes it makes me kind of cry or cringe. I can remember verbatim the 2 sentences I got from these 2 coaches. I mean, they were positive and they were nice to be around. I got on with them, but I can remember, and this is sort of going back 20 plus years, the 2 sentences that they gave to me that stuck out. So, I mean, as coaches, our words have power, and let's just be mindful that our players are hanging on to our every word. So this magic ratio that we use from the research is 5 to 1. Okay. So as Mickey said, the one thing that we can do, that everyone can do to be more effective as a coach, is improve or up our positive to negative feedback ratio. So anybody got any thoughts on this? Anyone got any thoughts on this simple tool to be more effective as a coach?
Seems like it could be pretty hard to do, 5 positives to 1 negative in a practice at a time. So how, what might be some ways to do that?
Good point. I agree. I think the key here is it's got to be natural. Your players quickly work out what's forced and what comes natural with the cadence of a practice. So this 5 to 1 magic ratio, it doesn't necessarily all have to be within 1 hour-long practice or however long you practice. It may be spread out over a couple of sessions or 3 sessions. Don't feel the need to sort of cram it in unnaturally as well. And also, it doesn't always have to be verbal praise. I mean, it could be non-verbal. It could be simply just a thumbs up, you know, or a sort of a fist bump, etc. So good question, Emily. Anybody else? Got any questions on that before we move on? Excellent. So I need one more volunteer, please, to read out Phil Jackson's words here. We should have up on the screen.
About that time, Jim's book shows up and positive coaching becomes an influence in my life. The 5-to-1 ratio, 5 praises to 1 critique. And of course, the rest we know is that these Bulls won 3 championships in a row.
Excellent. So here we are, Phil Jackson, NBA player, NBA coach, just talking about the power, even with professional players, of the magic ratio. So let's watch the video and see what he's got to say.
So we can just pretend that we heard it. We can keep going through.
Adam, this is Joe in Chicago. Can I ask you a question?
Yes, Joe.
You keep using the word magic ratio. What do you mean by magic?
So the magic ratio comes from the research of leading psychologists. So John Gottman is one of the psychologists we know that's done a lot of research with children, also with married couples as well. And what the research says is that if we deliver 5 pieces of positive feedback to every 1 piece of negative feedback, this is going to help us improve our players without damaging their confidence, without draining their emotional tank. So, yeah, as opposed to, for example, a 2-to-1 ratio where we're giving 2 pieces of positive to 1 negative. In that instance, the research says that players only remember the negative piece of feedback. Joe, does that answer your question? Am I being clearer there for you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, great. So in terms of the video, anyone got any thoughts, any questions on the video? Good. Okay, so over
Phil
to
Jackson basically.
Yes, Mickey.
Go ahead, Mickey. He didn't hear you.
Sorry. I mean that I think Phil Jackson was emphasizing that power of positivity but I'm like expressing like how negativity just is like an atomic bomb going off.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with professional players, even players that have been playing for so long and they're used to the coaching dynamic. You use the words atomic bomb going off using, this criticism. So we've just got to be mindful of how often we are giving negative feedback. So over to you, coaches now. If you could pair up, we're going to spend 3 minutes. I'm going to give you a scenario. So if you could pair up with someone that you ideally haven't met before, and also if you could also find someone from a different sport, I think it's always useful to learn from someone else's experience. So this is the scenario. So you know that athletes thrive on positive feedback, but your team's been struggling and needs a lot of correction. So you, as a double goal coach, how can you give them feedback that they need to improve without discouraging them? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to share. Excellent. Did anyone come up with anything? Anything in your pairs that you think might be useful to the group?
My partner and I, we thought that we just have to pick out the errors and the flaws that we choose to address, not try to address all of them, because otherwise it'll be a stream of, fixing and correction. So we felt like we had to ignore some of the flaws and focus on just one or two of them.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. Again, I think it's a propensity as a coach that we can look to correct everything and get sucked into everything, Ruben, and then we just create paralysis as we flood our players with too much information. So yeah, it's a great one, thanks. Anybody else?
Adam, I'm actually going to stop you there.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't mind if you go a little bit over 20 minutes, but I don't want to cut into Mickey's time either.
Okay.
You were at 26 minutes and you had a little ways to go. So I wanted to make sure that I gave you enough time.
Okay.
Just refresh our memory, Adam. What principle did you do for your second demo?
Elm
and you
tree.
did the introduction. You did the elm tree. Okay, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Okay. So I would love to hear from everyone something that you really liked about what Adam did. Picture him in a live workshop. Picture you being in the room as one of the coaches. I'd love to hear something that stood out to you or something you really liked. And then if you have a suggestion for him, that would be great. So Emily, do you mind if we start with you?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'm going to pick two things because it's hard for me to choose that I really liked. I really liked the aggressive listener kind of example. I kind of love that word. It was interesting having those two things put together, aggressive listening, but I think it kind of proves the point that listening is really important to what kids and athletes have to say. I also really liked the example of throughout the course of your entire career, you only remember two specific positives from coaches, because that caused me to think of my athletic career. And I was like, you're right. Like, I don't remember any specific things that coaches said to me. So I think that really proved that point around, how focusing on strengths is important. In terms of just like one growth area, going through the order for kind of like what brings down the e-tank versus, increases it, maybe showing everything up front and then doing the demo, but that's just a preference thing for me.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mickey, would you find one thing you liked and one thing you think he could improve on?
So I really like how you related back with Kelly on a couple times in regards to relating the feelings. So you shared in similar feelings, at one time or another, and kind of goes hand in hand with some of repeating back the examples, back to us, encouraging us that, hey, we're on the right track. So I like that relatability. One opportunity, I think that, again, somewhat of what Emily stated about when you were talking about the positives and the negatives, tank filling versus tank draining, he kind of jumped around from one to the other a lot. And it was hard to kind of follow which one we were actually in at that point.
Thanks, Mickey. Good suggestion. Joe?
Hi, Adam. How are you? In general, I thought it was very strong. You have great relatable tone. I think it flowed naturally through the ideas, not just feeling like it was slides. The one thing I would be careful of, and I don't even know if you noticed this happened, you asked Kelly how she felt after missing the goal and getting positive feedback, and her answer was confused. And I think you presupposed her answer would be different and didn't respond to what she really said. So I think you expected her to say, well, that felt great, and that felt better than before, but her answer wasn't particularly positive. Her answer was, I'm not sure how I should feel. And it's one of the trickiest things, I think, in a workshop to really use the participants' responses as they're given, even when sometimes they're contrary to what you're saying.
So would you,
if
you're in that situation, Joe, would you have dealt with that?
Absolutely.
Would you have yeah, okay.
I think one tool that would be helpful for you there is re-questioning is such a powerful tool. So really talk about that. Let's hear about that. And you know, you can get a lot of real depth in a workshop by using the actual lived experiences of the participants as well as your own.
Joe, how about in that moment? You know, it's funny, Joe, that you bring that up, because in the moment I was thinking, gosh, what would I do if I got that response? I'm confused, you know. 20 minutes later, the idea I have is Joe, what if we ask the rest of the coaches, so why do you think Kelly's confused?
Mm-hmm. That's fine. That's another great way of, I think, digging into their expertise as the source of the depth of the workshop. I think you know, a lot of times, I'm getting a lot of echo from somebody right now. A lot of times there's a lot of great expertise in the room that when I'm working with trainers, they don't tap into some of the great ideas that aren't theirs. And I think to respect the fact that there are great ideas in the workshop that don't come from you can really empower your workshops.
All right, thanks, Joe. Very good advice. Ruben?
So Adam, when you said the 2 pieces of specific positive feedback that you received, like Emily, I perked up. It's like, wow, that was like a wow moment for me. I would have liked to have heard what they were. You said I can remember specifically the phrases. I wanted to know what the phrases were. If you say I can remember specifically the phrases, then you have to actually know them crisply and right. But you know, Kelly always talks about how much she learns in being a trainer of trainers. That you know, that makes me think of a potential exercise in a workshop is, you know, hey, pair up. I want you to tell your partner about one instance of truthful, specific praise you received as an athlete, you know, and then you can do the opposite. It's not in the script or anything, but it's potential exercise that I may try sometime. I like it. You know, my main suggestion, Adam, is I think the pace has to be faster. I think that the pace just has to be faster. Less words, shorter descriptions, and keep it moving more.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
All right, thanks. I'm not going to repeat what anybody else said, but I think definitely you know the information, and sometimes knowing the information too much is kind of a problem because we want to tell everyone everything we know. And you were at about 26 minutes and you hadn't gotten to the tools yet. And the tools are the most important part. We want the coaches to be able to have tools to be able to go out and use. Each principal has theory and practice and then tools for them to go use. So we want to make sure that we get to that part, and so that they can challenge themselves and think about how they would use this and what they would use in their practice. And that's where the sharing and the engagement comes in a lot. So I want to make sure that you don't get to the end and only have 2 minutes to go over this list of tools.
Yeah. Because
that's what the coaches need. I do like the way that you did talk about, you know, your experiences. I agree with Ruben. I would like to hear a little bit more about it. Yeah. I think that will come, being able to put in your experience and the coach's experience and just become more smooth with that. The other thing that I did like was the way that you used a lot of expression when you were explaining something. And I think it was beyond the accent. You know, you seemed excited. And then I really think that the tone of your voice, the up and down, the pace was good. The more that you can keep it moving faster, as Ruben said, less words and keep it moving through, not speaking faster, but that'll keep the coaches more engaged. Yes. My biggest suggestion for you that wasn't mentioned yet was ask purposeful questions. I don't think there's ever a reason to get to the end of a slide and say, does anybody have any questions on that?
Okay.
Because if you really explained it well, they shouldn't have any questions. However, if you want to ask, where have you used that? Or how could you see yourself trying this in practice? Or tell me about a player that you know that has used this. You know, just ask a question with a direct answer in mind that you want them to get. Yes. And I think that will help. You had 3 different times where you said, do you have any questions on that? Which I think is good to do, but that shouldn't be the follow-up to a video or the follow-up to a principal. Leave yourself
Agreed,
open
yeah.
to be able to get questions throughout, but ask a real purposeful question.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. This was useful, everyone. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. And I think Marty joined us too. Adam, you're welcome to stay on for Mickey, or if you have other places you need to be, that's fine too. Bye, Emily. Thanks for joining us.
I'll stay.
Good job,
Thanks.
Adam. Good luck.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you, Emily.
All right, Mickey, I saw you jumping in and out. Was that an internet connection issue?
Yes, so hopefully I have a stronger one now. So
Okay. Well, if you don't and you end up dropping out, we'll hang on there.
Okay.
Marty, you've met Mickey?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Mickey.
Great.
Hi, Marty.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. You?
I am great. I'm going to apologize in advance, depending on how long this goes. I have a call at 1, so I might have to jump off a little bit early.
Okay.
All right. Well, then we'll let Mickey go right to it. Go, Mick.
Sounds great. Okay. Well, here we go. So now that we've got it, we have today, we're going to dig deep into principle number 1, filling that emotional tank. We're going to get connected. Yes, gentlemen, we're going to get in tune with our emotions, our feelings. So let's go at it. So I'd like for somebody to read this quote for me up here. Who would like to do that?
I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Pretty powerful quote from one of our American authors, Maya Angelou. So if we could go to the next slide. When we're thinking about a moment back in our childhood, our past of some sort, I'd like for us to go back when, you know, we've experienced a time where somebody was underperforming, whether it was the overall team, maybe it was you as an individual. Go back in time and really think about what that felt like, what that looked like. What did you see? Maybe there were some things on the bench or the sidelines that, you know, was kind of really echoing in your thoughts or in your heart. What did that look like when they were underperforming? Who would like to share some of their experience?
Well, for me, I don't know if this is what it looked like, but there was a lot of excuse making and finger pointing.
So some nonverbals, Ruben.
Sometimes nonverbal and sometimes verbally.
Okay.
Gosh, if Marty would just pass me the ball, we'd have a chance of winning.
I know. He's such a jerk.
He is. Ball hog.
So a hoarder. All right. So some name calling. I gotcha. Anybody else? What else sticks out in our thoughts?
I just had a team. Go ahead, Marty.
No, go ahead, Kelly.
I was just going to say, the team that I was thinking of, they just didn't finish. They didn't follow through. They didn't have that effort. They'd start something and then they just wouldn't take it till the end. They'd give up pretty easily.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I was just gonna similar with body language, more nonverbal. So literally, head above the, doing this, heavy sighs, looking down, a lot of, and giving up. I mean, really, the body language said, "We're giving up. It's over."
Right. So as I look at through my experience as well, I mean, body language became huge, and if you could show what's on the slide here. But when we start to deplete an athlete's tank, you really start to see the criticism, that goes hand in hand with that. Sarcasm, ignoring people. Maybe some people are getting shunned on the bus or on the sidelines. You guys spoke of all the nonverbals. So when you look at really the research, 90% of the time, and we don't even realize we're doing this, but 90% of the time that we're communicating, it becomes so nonverbal. The sighs, the finger pointing that we talked about, or shrugging of the shoulders, or name calling. Well, that would be a little bit verbal, right? But, those are the aspects that we aren't even really aware of when those type of things are happening. So how about the reverse effect of that? What do we think it was? Look like, fuel leads, so really firing on all cylinders, and everyone's basically just knocking it out of the park. Who would like to share some of those experiences?
The team in those cases seemed just really focused on the task at hand, and everything about their behavior, their talk, their interaction was, we want to succeed as a group together.
Yeah, so there's that level of connectedness that basically just ties everybody in. And like I said earlier, everyone's kind of firing on all cylinders. Nice one, Mark. Ruben, appreciate that.
I'll add to that too. A lot more high fives, handshakes, chest bumps, those sorts of things happening. Smiles, a little more pep in the step, those kind of things.
Yeah, you guys are all telling me how intense you guys are as far as competitors. So yeah, those chest bumps and high fiving, I mean, definitely those are flying high for sure. Anyone else?
I think they're just having fun.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's usually one of the first things I ask my team is, are we having fun? And if the answer is no, why are we here, right? You know, being able to connect into our hearts, our passion of what we enjoy doing, it becomes so, so important and impactful in regards to sports in general. But being able to have that connectivity through that fun-loving spirit, those teachable spirits, it's so, so rewarding from that perspective. So again, as you know, you're looking up here on the screen, and you're kind of, again, just as we review through your experiences, you guys are well on your way. You guys know exactly what depletes your athletes' tanks. You know, being more pessimistic and giving up more easily, definitely less coachable. You know, as our athletes are being praised and, you know, being lifted up to some high standards, you know, and they're performing, they're so much more optimistic. They're having fun. They're able to deal with adversity and so much more coachable. So we're going to get into a little acting. Who would love to be my athlete? I need a volunteer.
I nominate Marty.
Marty, are you in?
I'm in, all the way.
Awesome. Okay, well, Marty's going to be our athlete, okay? So as Marty is going to be our athlete, we are all going to be his coach. So Marty is in a situation where he basically has an opportunity to score the game-winning basket. And we've drawn up this amazing play because we are such amazing coaches, right? And he is going to drive to the hoop off of a pick and roll screen, and he's going to basically blow it, okay? He's going to look to us for some kind of feedback, and we are going to let him have it negatively. Are we prepared to do that?
We are.
All right, so let's count it down. Marty, you're in a triple threat, dude. You are on your way to the basket. Here we go.
All right, here we go.
Dribble, and
are you kidding me?
Oh my God!
What are you thinking? Come on, you can't miss those. You got to make those shots.
What's
Marty?
wrong with you?
I mean, we have practiced that so many times. I mean, come on. So, I guess, what did we observe? What did we just see in that example? I mean, how do you think Marty's feeling right now?
Terrible.
Hopefully bad, because I feel bad. I mean, he ruined my record. You know, he'll be graduated in a year. I'll still have to be here with the rest of these underclassmen.
I hear you. I think I'm thinking about benching him right now, you know, for like the next game.
Well, I'll certainly take him out of this one.
For sure. Well, we don't have another opportunity. He blew it. He totally blew it. So what else? What else did we observe?
He's probably already feeling terrible, and we just piled on. We just, you know, I mean, he was already feeling bad, I'm sure.
Right. So we're going to run through the same scenario, okay? So now that we've recognized how horrible Marty feels, you know, from the negativity that we've given him, and he's totally depleted, okay, we're going to work on trying to build him back up, okay? We're going to give him another shot. So he's in another game scenario, same scenario, you know, we've got the play of plays all designed for him, and he's driving to the hoop, and he scores it right on the buzzer. I want us to basically build Marty up, pump him up, and fuel his tank, fill it to the brim with all that positivity that we're capable of doing. Ready? Here we go, Marty.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, Marty.
Awesome.
There you go.
Oh, you're the best thing.
Word, Mark.
Awesome. So now, what are we observing? What are we seeing? What do you think Marty's feeling?
Well, I think the same thing. I think he was probably already feeling pretty good hitting that game-winning shot. You know, so and then we added to it.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. What else? How about his skills? Do we see how like different his so his skills again were similar other than the end result, right?
Yeah, I think it'll help him. Yeah, it'll help him have the confidence. You know, if it's later in this game or if this one's over in the next game, if he's in that situation, he'll have a shot if the ball's in his hands.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think the main reason for that is because he made the shot. You said he made the shot, right, Mickey?
He did make the shot.
He made the shot. So I think the biggest impact on his confidence is the fact that the ball went through the hoop, not that we said, Marty, good shot.
No, you're right. I misunderstood the scenario. Sorry, Ruben.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate that. So yeah, so I mean, obviously, same type of scenarios. One was basically he failed at making the game-winning shot, and we basically emptied his tank with all the negativity, the pessimism, you know, his ability to probably be more coachable into the future probably went down. You know, he probably had higher anxiety because of that. I mean, so his feelings, you know, of connectedness to the team, he's like, I'm looking at myself as a failure, you know, but with the positive aspect, you know, of all the praise and again, that end result of being able to, you know, emulate a game where, you know, hey, he was given another opportunity and he was able to get the result that the team was desiring, but even more so than that positive approach kind of just fueling his fire to be able to build him up, you know, and I could look at this in a couple of different scenarios where let's say he was given one opportunity, you know, in real life in regards to, you know, kind of that pass or fail, you know, where here, you know, that second opportunity gave him another opportunity to be able to grow in regards to, hey, I was in a situation in past where I failed, but now I've got, you know, the support of my team behind me to be able to give me this next opportunity and all the things that kind of led up to that too. So again, just keeping that in mind as we work on filling each other's emotional tanks. Next slide. Yep, keep going. So as we, I just want you guys to think about this question. I don't want an answer right now because we're going to revisit it a little bit later. But what is the one thing most coaches can do to be more effective? I really want you to kind of like reflect on that, you know, maybe of things that have happened again in past and what you potentially are going to plan on doing in the future. Okay. So just touch on it right now. No answers given. Next slide. So as we're looking at our power of positivity, so that's what we've been talking about, you know, filling that emotional tank. So what does that look like? You know, we talk about that power of positivity in how much do I want to basically be able to give someone? Because again, we're not all about just, you know, never giving anybody any kind of constructive criticism or feedback, because we've got to correct, you know, again, skills a lot as coaches on a regular basis, right? So just thinking about this ratio, you know, the research has basically done so many studies, and I don't want us to just think about sports. So I know we're all coaches here. And again, as we're thinking about that power of positivity to our athletes, again, remembering better athletes, better people. So as we're thinking about this ratio, before we start shouting out some answers, I want you to think about too, you know, like looking at, you know, maybe our teachers in the classroom to our students. You know, if I'm giving positive accolades in our classrooms, you know, what does that look like? How about in our marriages, our relationships? You know, there's so much that, you know, goes into a relationship where if we're basically providing, you know, a positive approach, probably more likely to stay married. I don't know, you know, I mean, I guess, you know, those of us who are married, how many of you are married right now?
Used to be.
Okay. So thinking of like any of your significant other relationships, you know, that you are in right now, how many times, you know, again, providing a positive, you know, to, you know, your significant other, would that kind of come into play, you know, in a more positive way versus, hey, if I'm going to give some kind of constructive criticism? What do you think? What are your responses when you get that?
Well, I'm not going to marry these players. I'm coaching them, you know. So the question is what kind of ratio?
So I'm looking for basically, again, the more positives that we basically give in any kind of relationship, the better we're able to connect in a positive way. So thinking of how many times I give a positive to a negative, how we're able to build on that. So what do we think that number is? Anybody think 2 to 1?
I'll say 2 to 1.
I think it's higher.
10.
How about 5 to 1? Anyone think that?
That's too high.
That's too high, you think, Kelly?
How about to 0? Why do we need the 1?
Well, I think being able to provide some constructive feedback where we're able to correct, you know, some skills, because we're not always going to we're not perfect human beings, right? For the most part. I don't know if anybody can walk on water yet. I'm close. No, just joking. But no, I mean, ultimately that magic number, that ratio, the research shows that it's 5 to 1. So, you know, that being said, I mean, that's why I was talking about, you know, again, not just coaching our athletes, you know, but in the classroom, our relationships, even in business today, you know, being able to provide more of that positive approach to that one criticism is kind of that nice balance that we have to be able to connect to people in general. Again, better athletes, better people. So the more that I give that positive energy into, you know, the feedback that I'm giving, I'm going to get some better results. So let's go on to the next slide. So we're revisiting this question that I asked just a little bit ago. What do we think the one thing most coaches can do to be more effective now that we've all had a little bit of time to reflect on that? What do we think that is?
Be more positive.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. So again, increasing our positive to negative ratio. So Kelly, getting back to what you asked about why isn't it 0, right? Again, I know I talked a little bit about that. I mean, we're all human. We're not perfect. So, you know, again, we're not asking our coaches here, you know, to never give any kind of constructive feedback back. We know we're here to coach. We're here to teach. We've got all these teachable spirits, you know, here that are so eager to want to learn. But being able to build them up and then still break them down to a point where we can continue to build them up and have that nice ratio. So appreciate, again, the power of positivity just becomes so powerful for us. Next slide. So how many of you guys recognize Phil Jackson? Anybody? He was one of my personal favorites. I loved watching the Bulls win those championships, especially with Michael Jordan. So I'm just going to read this quote real quick. About the time Jim's book shows up and positive coaching becomes an influence in my life, the 5-to-1 ratio, five praises to 1 critique. And of course, the rest we know is that these Bulls won 3 championships in a row. So we're gonna watch a short video, but before we do, couple things. So you talked about Jim's book. So we're all armed. Again, I'm going to reference this book to you because ultimately this is a great way to be able to jump into this book when we're in need of kind of going a go-to. You know, there's so many different aspects of the book that basically kind of comes to mind, you know, especially like when I'm in a coaching moment, I want to refer back to afterward, you know, with the scenario that occurs. So keep that in mind, that is here for you guys as you continue this workshop. As we get into this video, Phil's going to speak of one specific thing that really kind of is just kind of mind-blowing in the video. So I'm going to ask you guys what that was after you listen.
Okay, we can pretend we went through it.
Right. So what did we hear in Phil's message? What was the main piece that he touched on?
I think the main piece is how much the negative comments and feedback affect a player, even a professional athlete.
Absolutely. That negativity, the power of negativity. Anybody else hear anything different?
I think you just have to be really careful.
Being really careful in regards to what, Kelly?
How you give any feedback, positive or negative.
Okay, very good. Very good.
It's how the athlete interprets it is what really matters. Not what you say, it's what they hear.
Right. Good one. I appreciate that. That's probably the first time that I've heard that piece of feedback on that aspect. So yeah, so I mean, again, both of you guys are correct in what you were hearing. The one piece that kind of like really just lit me up was the fact that he talked about it being an atomic bomb going off inside ourselves. Again, like feeling, you know, really being in tune with our feelings. So, you know, I mean, think back to a time where, you know, again, you received a piece of feedback that was very negative that impacted you. Just take a moment and think about that. How deep back do we have to go to remember? How many 20 years or more? Yeah, I kind of figured I'd get that answer because I myself also can go back that deep. So anybody want to share what that was for them that was so impactful and that stuck with you all these years?
I had a football coach in junior high that when I graduated and went to high school, I ran into him in the summer. I was a running back in junior high. And he asked me, oh, you're going to play football? Yeah, I'm going to play football. What position? And I said running back. And he had an incredibly negative and racist comment, which basically said, you can't play running back. And I never forgot that. I did play running back. I ended up playing fullback all through high school. But that always stuck with me, how incredibly negative and inappropriate it was.
Wow. And Marty, what I really heard too then is that kind of parallels some life lessons there in regards to racism and how impactful that was in the sport, not, you know, and then again, how that potentially would also impact life in general. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. Anybody else want to share?
Well, what came to mind for me was when first day of school, when after I'd had surgery over the summer, and we had to run a lap around the field, and it was a struggle for me. And when I got back to the classroom, way behind the rest of the class, the teacher saying, you'll never make it to 6th grade if you can't run a lap.
Wow. Well, obviously you proved her wrong, right?
I did.
But yeah, I mean, so again, thank you both for sharing those. I really appreciate that, your vulnerability in doing so. It's amazing, you know, the power that these pieces kind of have on us, and then how it affects us basically even later on in life. So again, I definitely do not take those moments for granted. And that's how we all are so impactful to the new opportunities that are in front of us. So let's put some of this into work, you know, through a scenario that we're going to do here. So I'd like for each of you to get into some small groups. And we'll put a couple of you here, a couple of you right here in the middle, and then a couple of you over to the right. I'm going to give you a few minutes, but here's the scenario before we go and move, all right? So we know that our athletes are thriving on positive feedback. That's a gimme, right? But we see that our team is just so struggling and they need so much correction at this point in time. So now that you're starting to get equipped with becoming a double goal coach, you know, again, we've got our book to reference here, as well as the development zone, you know, through our website to reference anytime we want. But as you talk in your small groups, how can we give them feedback that they need to improve without discouraging them? So I'm going to give you a few minutes, you know, and go through some scenarios with each other, and then kind of report out per each group. So who would like to go first? I'm pretending I gave you 3 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, I just want to, Mickey, I have to jump off for this call. I'll share my feedback with the group, but thank you for doing this today. It's great to see you, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So
our group,
you go, Kelly.
Our group talked about, we have younger kids, so we were just talking about how important it is to just encourage them and all the things that they are doing well, and show them the things that they're doing really well before we give them a correction.
Awesome. Great examples.
Yeah, ours ties in with that. In order to do that, we feel like we have to avoid commenting on every little mistake.
Man, you guys are going to be spot on here as we continue to move on. What else?
Sorry, I'm just making sure. Yeah, we talked as a team about how far we'd come since the start of the season.
Very good. Very good. So great examples that you guys just shared. So now we're gonna, I mean, you guys are almost ready to be able to teach this workshop yourselves, you know. So here's some tools that we're gonna share with you to be able to be more effective on providing feedback. So, you know, Ruben, you just talked about it, avoiding non-teachable moments. You know, so why would we really want to do that?
Why would we want to avoid non-teachable moments?
Right, and giving feedback in that moment.
It's a waste of time. It's a non-teachable moment. So by definition, nothing's going to be learned. So
right.
It's a waste of time.
So how about an example maybe that would be a non-teachable moment?
Kids crying because they're upset about how they played. So they're just in tears, just very emotional.
Right. So yeah, their emotions are high at that point in time, being able to kind of let them reflect on it, sit in it, and then be able to come back and revisit it possibly.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right moment to teach them the correct technique on how to execute a skill.
Absolutely. So great example. How about why would we want to even criticize in private?
Because dependent on the player, each player sort of responds differently to negative feedback. So to be on the safe side, I think better to do it in private to avoid humiliation or embarrassment.
Absolutely. Great one, Adam. I mean, again, the humiliation aspect, I mean, everyone kind of is reached differently in regards to that level of connectivity. So some people might end up being embarrassed, you know, if I'm publicly criticizing or providing that feedback to you in that moment. So again, picking and choosing your moments to be able to take the time to take them privately. Good one. How about, why would we want to ask permission? Like, I'm going to ask permission to an athlete to give them some feedback. Where would that be a good scenario, a good example to utilize?
I think when they come out, when you sub them out of the game, and you know, they might be all upset, and you might want to say something like, hey, I have a suggestion for you. Are you ready to hear it? Or do you need a drink of water first?
Good example, Kelly. Appreciate that. Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the most underutilized ones that I use, you know, because I'm usually not thinking about like when I would ask somebody permission to give them feedback, but that would be a great example to do that, especially when people are coming out of the game. Maybe they're already thinking, hey, I just made a mistake and coach is pulling me. So, you know, maybe their emotions are high too at that time. Maybe they do just want to get water. So perfect. How about an example of using an if-then statement?
Mickey, you know what? I'm going to cut you off too, if you don't mind. Sorry.
Yep.
I just want to make sure we have enough time for feedback.
Perfect.
And you were at, I think you were at about 28 minutes there. So I wanted to make sure that you knew,
Okay.
you were aware of how far you are.
Okay.
All right. Let's start with Adam. I'd love to hear, since he just went too, I'd love to hear what you really liked about what Mickey did, what stuck with you, what were some points that stood out, and what suggestions do you have?
Yeah, I really like your energy. I really like the fact your passion comes through, your personality comes through straight out the gate. That's just evident for everyone to see, I think. I like the fact that pressed into people's comments more than I did. So I'm sort of juxtaposing with how I did it. And you sort of went back to Ruben on a couple of occasions and went a few layers deeper, which I really enjoyed. And you kind of got him working a little bit. And you also did it with Kelly, if I recall. A suggestion, at times, even though what you're saying was good, I felt that you could have brought the learners in more frequently. There were long periods where you were talking, and it was all good what you were saying, but I would have liked to have been more engaged and asking more questions.
Okay.
Other than that, I enjoyed it, and I was scribbling things down and taking notes the whole time. So thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Adam.
Thanks. Joe?
There were a lot of things that were excellent, but the one thing I'm particularly grateful for is I think we've created a challenging slide sequence with that whole, you know, what thing do you think will make coaches better? Then talk about 5 to 1, then go back to that question. And I thought you handled that really well. And it was clearly I know how tricky it is for trainers, so I'm aware of how clearly you must have prepared that. And I'm really grateful that you said, don't answer this yet, think about it. And then went through the rest of the concept and let people work on that. I'm going to push back on something that we normally do, and it might be something you were taught, so Kelly can veto me on this, but I'm a big non-fan of asking really specific questions with really specific answers, like how many positives, negatives do you think are right here? I didn't think you handled it badly at all. I just think it's sometimes carefully consider the questions that we ask in terms of not having something that has a specific right answer that will essentially negate the points of view of all the people who answered wrong. And I know that's not built into the way we've built the deck, and it's not somehow how we've even in the notes probably prepared you to do it. But I would just be careful with saying, how many do you think it is? Do you think it's 5? Do you think it's 3? Just think through that as a possibility. I generally don't ask that as a question for that reason, because when I was mentoring teachers, I wouldn't have let them ask that question. So I know that might be a little bit against the grain. So
Joe,
take it with a grain of salt.
What you do instead of asking is you just tell them.
Yep.
Research says that the best
research says but I will actually query them on that. You know, so how does that fit with your? And I think I'm getting a lot of echo right now. I don't know who's if people could mute or whatever. Thanks, whoever did that. You know, where I think you can dig into it deeper then by saying, how does that fit with your experience? What is it like at your practice? What does your practice sound like? You know, and it gives us a little bit more room for what I feel are more interactive and meaningful questions. But again, I know that's against the grain, so I'm saying it with some caution.
I like that approach. I mean, that sounds pretty, again, in that I think you'd get that engagement too then in that aspect. You know, having said that, I've seen trainers do a really good job guessing it either way. You know, I think putting these, we're trying to get to the concept and for them to really fully engage in a concept, and whatever tool works for you to get to that point. I've seen fantastic trainers take completely different approaches than I would and be remarkably effective, much more than I could be. So it's just a matter of finding your voice in it. Gotcha.
So Joe, I'm going to keep putting you on the spot because I think Mickey and Adam both weren't super clear about this. Why do they call it the magic ratio?
Are you asking me or are you asking Mickey?
I'm asking you.
Well, the specific
you asked
reason
Adam,
is,
and then Mickey did it as well.
Right. So there's a couple answers to that. The specific technical reason is because that's Gottman's term. So Gottman coined the term magic ratio. I mean, so there's an exact reason, but the reason that we've talked about in workshops is that it is relating that ratio to its outcome, which is that it sustains a healthy relationship between the two people.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joe.
All right, Ruben?
So Mickey, what I remember the most and stuck with me the most powerful moment was how you drew out the two stories. You drew out Marty's story and my story. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a strong moment. I thought that was strong.
Repeat that again, Ruben. I'm sorry, I missed that. Repeat that again.
I thought that when Marty told his story about the coach saying you can't be a running back. Oh, yep. I thought it was a very powerful moment.
Okay.
That only happened because Mickey allowed it to happen. She drew it out. Mm-hmm. I also thought there was a similar response to the story that I told immediately afterwards, which again, Mickey made space for it and drew it out of me and brought me back to that moment in 5th grade when the teacher told me, you'll never make it to 6th grade if you can't run a lap. I thought that was powerful.
Boy, Ruben, that is, I think, such a great point, because that was such a poignant part of her demo with both those stories. Because the stories are so meaningful to both of you. It was real.
So I don't know how many demos I've been on where it's E-Tank, maybe 100, Kelly. I don't know how many I've been on. This is the first time someone's drawn me back to that moment and drawn that story out of me. So I thought it was strong. My suggestion, and I'm going to do it by asking you a question, Mickey, and Adam, you can think about this too, but I'll let Mickey respond. In terms of when a coach fills emotional tanks, what is the most important time for a coach to fill a player's emotional tank, do you think? What do you think, Mickey? Take a guess. I mean, I'm doing what Joe just said I shouldn't do, ask a question where I have an answer in mind.
Well,
but I'll do it anyway.
I think it's all the time. I mean, that would be my answer. From an awareness standpoint.
Okay, so good answer. Good answer. So the follow-up question is, what do you think is more important for you to fill my emotional tank? When I made the game-winning shot or when I missed the game-winning shot?
When you missed it. And I think I was trying to build on that, like from one opportunity to the next, but I think I could have paired it a little bit better in regards to
that's my point.
The flow
that's
of it.
My point. I think it's more important to fill players' tanks when they're struggling, when they make mistakes, when they're already down on themselves, when the fans are going, oh, that's to me the important That's where the power positivity is most important. So therefore, when we do the drain fill exercise, which you took us through, I think an important part of that exercise is fill my emotional tank after I have failed.
Right.
Not after I've succeeded. I mean, that's fine to do that, but to me, do you get where I'm going here with this?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
so that's enough talking by me.
That's a great point, Ruben. Can I make a quick comment on that?
Yep.
Because my teaching on that and feelings about that have been evolving recently, based on Dr. Fry's work and Dr. Fredrickson's work and the research at Google, and that notion of creating an environment where children feel emotionally, psychologically safe, I think has a role in that answer as well. In terms of, my point is, I can see where Mickey would say all the time, and I can see why you would ask the question about why it's important when it's a rough time. And I've been blending those. It's a great question. But as I've been reading more of the research on it, I've sort of been evolving from just the simple filling tank to creating an environment of tank filling.
Yeah, I actually appreciate the fact that you asked me that question, because now I'm reflecting on, again, that specific slide and then the acting scenario, being able to even ask that question after you go through the two scenarios and see what the people come up with, you know, your coaches come up with, because now they're able to really kind of relate the two, you know, and then you could even ask them, hey, you know, from a scenario of their experience, you know, how have you seen that show to be true in regards to what's more important?
You know, what's an interesting question to me would be, before, you know, if you were to tell an athlete that they're going to miss a shot or make a shot, what would their expectation be in terms of whether their tank would be filled or drained by their coach and or their team? It's just an interesting, it's something where I've been reading more on it recently, and your question helps clarify it for me. It's tricky.
Ruben, just to,
thank you.
I'd have said, if you're asking me directly, I'd have said at the start of a practice or a game and at the end to frame it. So I kind of agree with creating the climate like Joe was just saying.
I think if a player makes every shot, there's just natural tank filling that happens when you succeed. It you know, in fact, you could say, Mickey, you idiot. But if they've scored 25 points and the crowd's cheering for them, you know, there's all the, I'm going to extremes here. To me, the critical part of positive coaching is not when you win the game, but when you lose the game.
Yeah.
Well, so, Ruben, you'll laugh at me for saying this, but can I push back on that a little bit?
Yep.
Because I entirely agree with what you're saying, but I also think it has a lot to do with whether the kid takes the shot. So, you know, it's the sort of a priori, a posteriori thing that we're taking. You're talking about responding to behavior, and I'm talking about helping to influence behavior, and I think they both play a role.
Okay, so this conversation has wound through some different things. I want to bring it back to my main point, which is I think a critical part of the drain fill exercise, if you're going to do that exercise, is to have coaches practice filling emotional tanks when the player fails. Yeah, that's my main point.
To keep it simple.
I agree with you.
Yes, thank you for the summary, Ruben. Yes. All right, did you have anything else to add to Mickey, to say to Mickey, Ruben? Okay, great. Mickey, just to summarize it all here, I agree. I think one of the things I really like is your personality came through. I think you've got a good sense of humor, and I think, you know, the emotion, you're smiling, you're having fun, you had serious faces, and I think, you know, you and Adam both did a nice job at that, and don't take it lightly. Sometimes when people get up to talk in front of others, they freeze and they become very monotone, and both of you have a lot of emotion in your voice, which goes a long way. I really like the part where at the end where you had us, again, thinking about, you said, like, how far do we have to go to remember? And I think, you know, your point was you had to go back very far. Like, you remember when something happened very far. not how far do we have to go back, but think about how far back you still remember that. The way you worded it seemed like, well, how far back do we have to remember? I mean, I can remember something negative that was said to me yesterday, but the fact that I remember something that happened to me 20, 25 years ago, like you said. And again, that was the life connection. And I would challenge you to almost think of a way to put that in the beginning, because that took about 22 minutes for you to get me to connect.
I got you.
And with your own stories, with a story that you have, some emotional connection is, especially for this principle, emotional tank, that's going to help engage the coaches. So I wouldn't wait till 22 minutes into it.
Gotcha.
I also probably wouldn't wait as long to have us share with a partner or get into a group, because activity, I liked how you had Marty get up. He was the athlete, the coach. That's all great. But sometimes when you say, does anyone else want to share something? There's some topics, especially when you're talking about how people feel emotionally, that they might not be comfortable sharing in front of a big group. So if you ask a question to the big group and you hear crickets, like nobody's answering, maybe that's a key that it's kind of a sensitive topic and you want to have them share with a partner or share with a group or write it down or some other way for them to share besides just one-on-one, me talking to you in front of all these people whose eyes are on me. Because even as adults, that's intimidating.
Sure.
So just be ready to pull some of those out of your pockets a little bit sooner.
Okay.
Again, I think the same thing with Adam. You went 28 minutes and did not get through all the tools yet. It's way too long. And especially since this is the first principle shop, if that's going to be 90 minutes, you've got to make this, you want to get to the tools at least 15 minutes. You want to have at least 5 minutes at the end for the tools. Maybe Ruben and Joe will disagree with me on that, but I really think the tools is a strong takeaway, and I don't want you to have to rush through it. So if each principle is set up, like we said, with introducing it, activity, and then the tools, they need equal amount of time. So 28 minutes to explain E-Tank is way too long.
Gotcha.
So find a way to keep it. And I think even like the 5-to-1 ratio part, you spend a good 5 minutes on that part. That doesn't have to be that long. So, you know, keep going through that a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I definitely recognize that too there.
There's enough material in this that you don't have to dwell on anything too long. If anything to dwell on a coach's response.
Gotcha.
That they say something that really, wow, that was deep, that was important. Let's take an extra minute on that. But I don't think any of the other things in this workshop need you to reiterate and, you know, dwell on it a couple times.
Okay.
So I think that was all that I had. I was looking for group work and then you did it, which was good. The book reference was good. I'd like to hear a story from you. That was one thing, you and Adam both. I'd like to hear a story from, you know, you said, Adam, about the positive experience. You had to think about it. I agree with Ruben. I wanted to hear it. And I think from Mickey, I want to know something that happened in your life. You played, you know, at a high level of basketball. I want to hear what happened. What did coaches do for you? What was an experience that you had?
Okay.
So I think that's, again, it's all about having the coaches connect to what you're doing and really feeling it would make a huge difference. Rather than what you're saying, they want to hear how you're saying it and connect to that too.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So thank you, both of you. I'm going to ask if Ruben and Joe have an extra minute here. I don't know how much time you have. If you guys have 5 minutes, I was going to let 3 of us just talk for a minute so we can figure out the next steps for you and Adam. If that would be okay with you guys, and then I will get back to you.
Yeah,
awesome.
Good with that.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a great day.
Great job, guys. Great meeting you,
Thank
Adam.
you.